Start recording. I think I've started recording. Okay. So nice to see you all, guys. Today is our second week for chapter number 5, discounted cash flows. Okay. So this is week 9. Next week, week 10, is when you will have your exam, midterm exam. So let's start with the midterm exam. A couple of minutes talking about that. Then we'll move on to finish the chapter. And if you have any questions, you can stop me anytime, ask your questions, especially given that this is going to be submitted to the Ministry of Education. It's nice to have some communication between me and you. So if you have any questions, if you're a little bit shy to ask your questions, don't be shy, ask your questions. That will help everyone. So, midterm exam next week. Midterm will cover, as usual, everything that we've covered this semester so far. So far we've only covered 5 chapters. Okay. So the first chapter. Okay, I'll give you a hint. The first chapter is not going to be in the midterm exam because the first chapter was Introduction to Financial Management, the goal of financial managers, like maximizing shareholder value, those sort of things. There isn't much to calculate, or there is nothing to calculate in the first chapter. So another hint is the midterm exam will include things to calculate. I will not give you open-ended questions like, okay, what is the goal of a financial manager? Open-ended, you have to write what you remember. There will be no questions like that. The midterm exam is pretty similar to what you have every week for your tests, for your weekly tests. Pretty similar. So the way it's going to happen is I will post an Excel file on Moodle. You will download the Excel files. All the questions will be different depending on your student ID. So the question will rely on student ID, meaning that all of you guys will have different questions. So all of you will have different answers as well. Be very difficult to copy each other's answers. You'll take some time, let's say a couple of hours, to answer the questions, and then within the deadline of a couple of hours, you'll have to upload your Excel file back to Moodle. So that's how the midterm exam will go. Okay, and in the exam, in the Excel file, in the Excel sheet, there will be like yellow highlighted cells. That's where you will have to enter your answers. No, not anywhere else. And all of the rest of the sheet you can use for your calculations, write whatever you want, anything like that. So of course the exam is online. This whole semester is e-learning. We are only supposed to meet 3 times live like we are now. The rest of the weeks are supposed to be disconnected. But we've already had, this is our 3rd meeting already for this semester, so we'll go overboard with that. I'll have another couple of meetings with you guys 2 weeks before the final exam. So before the final exam, I'll see you 2 times like this live. So that gives you chance to ask more questions before the final exam. All right? Okay. Yeah, any questions about the final exam? I'm sorry, about the midterm exam next week.
How many questions will be there, Professor?
Right, I'm still working on the questions, so I'm not 100% sure, but most likely, let's say something like 5 problems, and each problem will have like a couple of questions. So let's say 10 or 12 questions, and if you have 2 hours for that, so 2 hours divided by 10, 12 questions, that's about 10 to 12 minutes per question. So it's enough time to read the question 2 times, read it twice, because the most difficult thing, the most important thing is for you to understand what you have to do, right? If you know what you have to answer, what is the question about, then the rest is easy. You just start with the formulas, equals, rate, open the brackets, you get all the hints. Excel gives you all the hints, right? So the most important question is for you The most important thing is for you to understand the question, so make sure you read each question 2 times. You'll have enough time for that, at least 10 minutes per question, right? Or maybe a little bit more, 12 minutes per question. So you can even read the question 3 times. Make sure you really understand what is the question about. Like, let's say we have some multiple payments coming in, right? We have some multiple payments coming in, and let's say it's equal payments of I don't know, let's say 100,000 every year for 7 years, but the first payment is not next year. The first payment is 3 years from now. But after that, it's every year for 7 years, 100,000. So that sounds like a regular payment, right? We're going to talk about PMT today as well. Remember, we've mentioned PV, FV, PMT, a rate, NPR, right? So that sounds a little like PMT, but it's not starting next year. It's starting 3 years from now. So what are they going to do for that, right? All these sort of things, if you understand the question, then answering it will be much easier. Excel will help you with a lot of formulas, right? So read the question 3 times, 2 times, 2 times, 3 times, as you choose. Make sure you understand it. More questions about the midterm? No? So it will cover chapters 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4 chapters, 4 of the last chapters we've gone through. So that would be balance sheet, income statements, all the financial statements, right? The next chapter after that was all the ratios. Remember the asset management ratios, liquidity ratios, all those sort of ratios. The next chapter after that would be the time value of money, TMV. That's when we only looked at 4 variables, PV, FV, NPR, and rate. Time value of money, simple way of looking at time value of money. And then last week we started a new chapter, discounted cash flows, where we introduced this 5th variable, PMT, the regular payments. And today we're going to finish with that chapter. Okay. So only 4 chapters should be absolutely fine, not very difficult. You can prepare all 4 chapters. And as you know, on Moodle, I have already posted the answers to the first 3 tests. Every week you have your tests, right? The answers to the first 3 tests are already on Moodle. I will try to make time to prepare the answers to another 4 tests. Last week you had test number 7. Sometime this week. Yes, perhaps in the next couple of days. Okay. So before we jump into the new material, any other questions about the midterm exam? Oh, very important. The timing of the midterm exam. It's only going to take 2 hours, right? So you will have a deadline. If you submit your Excel file late, Moodle will not accept it. You will not be able to submit the Excel file. Okay, you will not be able to submit your midterm. So don't be late for the exam. Okay, if you oversleep, you play too much computer games on Monday next week, on Tuesday you cannot wake up, oversleep, then you wake up too late, you only have 20 minutes before the exam finishes. My God, you just have 20 minutes. You gotta do it really, 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 really fast. That's no good. So make sure you take it in time. Do you want to start at 10 or 9?
10, Professor.
10. Okay, let's start at 10 and finish at 12. Deadline 12. Is that okay? Any objections? Okay, so we'll start at 10, finish at 12. All right.
Professor?
Yep.
Sure. Can we ask you a question like for the weekly test later after you finish your chapter?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Before I post the questions, I think maybe it's even better to ask the questions today. Yeah, I think it's even better. Yeah. So let's split today's class into 3 parts. I've prepared 2 parts, like 2 hours of lecturing. I'll give you extra time for your today's test. Sometime in late afternoon, you'll have your deadline. So yes, for the third section of the class, we can just go over any of the questions that you have for the previous tests. That's fine. Good idea. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, let's jump into our new material. Gotta find it. Just give me a minute. Right. Start presenting a window. Let's see if I'm recording. Have I been recording? I have been recording. That's good. And the new material over here. Okay, can you guys see this Excel sheet? Am I sharing?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so to summarize, over the last several weeks, we've learned how to use present values, that's PV in Excel formulas. We've talked about future values, that's FV in Excel formulas. We've learned how to use rates, the interest rates, discount rate, cost of capital. All those are different names for the same thing, which is the interest rate. And in Excel formulas, we use the formula rate for that. And over the last several weeks, we've also looked at how to use this NPER formula, which stands for number of periods in your investment or in your loan that you're calculating something for. Okay, so we've talked about these four variables for 3 weeks already. Okay, and last week we introduced one more variable, which is the PMT. Okay, so PMT, as we introduced last week, represents some sort of regular payments. Okay, some sort of regular payments at regular intervals. So the payment that is of the same amount and also takes place at a regular interval. Okay, actually it also would have another name. Okay, annuity, regular payments over a regular interval of time. So annuity is this other name for regular payments over a regular period of time. Okay, so how annuity looks like on a timeline is something like this. Let me take a minute to start drawing here. Let's say we have a timeline on Excel like this. And let's say this is time 0. This is 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, and so on. Okay, and to represent annuity, to represent a regular payment, maybe you are buying an investment that will promise you a regular payment for the next 4 years. Let's say it promises to pay you 20,000 over the next 4 years. If the investment pays you 20,000 over the next 4 years, that would be a positive cash inflow into your pocket. So I have regular payments every year over here of the same amount of 20,000. Here's an example of an annuity. Okay. And for example, if you manage to pay, say 72,400 for this investment. So basically you are buying the investment, let's say from a bank, where you give the bank 72,400 right now, and in return the bank pays you 20,000, a 4-year annuity, okay, over the next 4 years. Then this is how this exchange between you and the bank would look like on the timeline. Okay, let's try to calculate something based on this example. Okay, first let me see if I can find these variables on this example of the timeline. Okay guys, so how do you think, which number should I use for PV?
It should be 72,400.
Yep. Yes. How about FV? Do I have anything for FV, future value?
No.
No. So we don't want to confuse things here. You're absolutely right. We don't have any future value here. So you see at the end of year 4, we have 20,000 here, but actually it's part of the annuity, those regular payments. So FV, future value, is the value that we have at the end of the period, but besides the annuities. Okay, very good, yes. Do I see anything about the rate here? Do we have
No.
No, we don't have a rate here, very good. How about NPR, number of periods? Do I know anything about number of periods here?
4 year.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yep, very good, 4. And PMT is the regular payment, which is 20,000 in this case, right? Very good, let's move on. PV. So to remind you, PV stands for present value, but actually we might have examples where, let's say, a relative invested for you 10 years ago, and you are now going to cash out this investment, okay? So in this kind of a strange example, today is when you are receiving the money, but original investment was made 10 years ago. So although PV, the full name of PV is present value, actually what it stands for, actually what it means, is any kind of original investment. Okay, so in this example, yes, negative 72,400. In this example, we don't have any separate values that will come in addition to the regular payments from the bank into your pocket. So FV is simply 0. FV is future value, and as you know, is just some sort of a separate, another amount in addition to any regular payments that is received or paid at the end of the investment timeline. Okay. A rate, I don't see any rate here, so perhaps that's the thing that we're going to calculate. NPR, as I said, stands for number of periods. Clearly we have 4 periods here, so that's 4. PMT, the only number we haven't used is 20,000, so that's the 20,000 over here. You see? So even if I don't give you the actual question, right? If you understand what's going on and just relate the numbers you see on the timeline to these 5 variables, you can see what's missing. So it's obvious we can calculate the rate here, right? So to do that, you already know, we just hit equals. Everything is really easy as long as you understand the question. All the calculations are done by the computer for you. Type rate, open the brackets, and you even get the hints of what to enter here. NPR, I just click here, comma, PMT, I just click here, comma, FPV, click here, comma, FV. There's nothing in addition to these regular payments that I receive at the end of the period. So that's 0. Close the brackets and hit enter. Looks like it's 4%, but let me remind you, we like to have more precise answers. So you can use this button to see more precision here. Okay guys, let me remind you, 4 is not the same as 4.12. So on the exam, let's have 2 decimal places after the decimal place, after the decimal point. So make sure you have the more precise answers on the exam. It's actually 4.12% per year, per period. Okay? So of course, for your exams, 4 would be incorrect. 4.12 would be correct because we want to have precision. Okay? So that is generally what is an annuity and an example of calculating a rate for an annuity of 4 years. Okay? But there are 2 kinds of annuities. Okay? So there are 2 kinds of annuities. There is one kind of annuity over there, another kind of annuity over there. There is ordinary annuity, okay, where the regular payments take place at the end of the periods. Okay, so this example that we've looked at is an ordinary annuity. We see that the first 20,000 is paid at the end of the first period. The second is paid at the end of the second period, and so on. So the last fourth 20,000 is paid after you finished waiting for 4 years. Okay, but there's another kind of annuity, which is called annuity due. Okay, so let's put the full name here. That's ordinary annuity. And this is called annuity due. That is the annuity where the regular payments take place at the beginning of the periods. Okay, so how would it look like on the timeline? Let me try to copy this. I wonder if it can be easily done. Very good. So an annuity due in this example would look like this. Just simply move these regular payments by one period to the left. You see the first 20,000 in this example is paid to you at the beginning of the first year. So the very beginning of the first year is today, right? The second 20,000 is paid to you at the beginning of the second year. The very beginning of the second year is same as the very end of the first year, so that's where the payment takes place. That's like, if you think about it, the 1st of January, the very beginning of the second year, is very, very close to the 31st of December, which is the very end of the first year. So that's why this second 20,000, for example, looks like it's at the end of the first year, 31st of December first year, while it's probably actually on the 1st of January second year. But 1st of January and 31st of December, they're really close to each other, so we don't really see much difference there at all. And the last fourth 20,000 is paid to you at the very beginning of the fourth year. So it's fourth 20,000 and fourth year, but the very beginning of the fourth year is more or less the same as the very end of the third year. So this is how an annuity due would look like. Okay. So there it is, and let's calculate something else to show us the differences between an ordinary annuity and an annuity due. Okay. So let's have another example over here. Zoom out a little so I can have a longer timeline, a little longer, more years if they can fit. That's today, 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now. And let's say as an investment, it's an annuity where the bank promises to pay you whatever, let's say 15,000 5 times. So anyway, we're looking at the difference between annuity due and ordinary annuity. Okay. So for that, we're going to look at this example. We have an investment lasting for 5 years. Okay. And as an investment, the bank promises to pay you 15,000 5 times to you. Okay. And the way this investment looks like on the timeline, we see there are 5 payments of 15,000, and they start at the end of year 1, and they finish at the end of year 5. So this is an ordinary annuity. This is an example of an ordinary annuity. And let's say, for example, the current interest rates on the market per year is whatever, let's say 6%. Let's say 6%. Let's say in addition to these payments, the bank doesn't promise to give anything else to the investor. So at the end of year 5, the future value, which is an additional payment at the end of the investment lifetime, in addition to any kind of regular payments, is 0 in this case. Okay. So let's say the question is, how much are you happy enough to pay for this investment? Happy double P, right? So that will depend on the interest rate. That will depend on the future cash flow. Here's an example of understanding the question. So if the question is, how much are you happy enough to pay? Pay probably now, right? For this investment, how do you guys think, which of the 5 variables we have to calculate? The 5 that we usually look at are our rate, NPR, PV, FV, and PMT, right? So how much are you happy enough to pay for this investment? Which of these 5 do you have to calculate? How do you think?
PV.
Yes. Present value. Presently, you'll have to pay for that investment presently. So that'll be PV. And if you do buy this investment right now, you'll have to pay for it right now. That will be the original payment at the beginning of this investment lifetime. So what we have to calculate is, of course, PV. PV is our unknown. Okay, so let's try that. Equals PV, open the brackets. You already know how to do that. Rate. Click here, that's 6%. Or you could simply type 0.06. Or you could simply type 6%. The computer would understand all of those. Okay, I like the decimals because there are some strange formulas. Later on, we'll talk about different types of interest rates where the computer doesn't really understand the percentage sign. So just stick to the decimal places and you'll always going to be fine. Okay. Comma, for number of periods, we have 5. Comma, for PMT, we have positive 15,000. Comma, for FV, we have 0. Okay. And now we're not going to ignore this one more hint over here. Okay. Come a bit closer to the screen if you cannot see it, but it says type. It's a very small thing over there. And what it refers to is this different type of annuity. Is it a regular annuity or is it annuity due? Okay, when you just ignore it and close the bracket, okay, the computer always thinks that it's a regular ordinary annuity. So for ordinary annuity, we just put 0 for the type. As you see, if you type 0 there, it says end of period. If instead you type 1, over here for 1, it says beginning of the period. Okay. So far we've never talked about annuities due. We've just ignored that last hint, which says type. It actually refers to what kind of annuity is there. Do the PMTs happen at the end of the periods or do the PMTs happen at the beginning of the periods? Okay, now for this particular example where we compare ordinary annuity and annuity due, we don't ignore that hint. In this case, it's 0 because it's ordinary annuity, and hit enter. We see that the value of this investment right now is over 63,000. Okay. Now let's have a look at a very similar example with annuity due, just to see the difference. Control C, Control V. Let me move these payments one period to the left. So everything is the same. All the numbers are the same. The only thing is that these regular payments happen at the beginning of each period. There are still 5 regular payments. And even though the last payment happens at the end of year 4, NPER is still 5 because there are 5 regular payments. It's just that the 5th payment is made at the beginning of year 5. So it's kind of the same as the end of year 4. Okay. So this is actually annuity due. So let me rename it. This is an example for annuity due. Let's try to calculate PV over here and see if there is any difference. And maybe that will also help us to understand something about PVs, understand something about difference in different annuity types. So equals PV, open the brackets, same rate of 6%, same NPR of 5, same PMT of positive 15,000, same 0 FV. This time for type we have 1, that's annuity due, and PV is going to be bigger, bigger, bigger. Why? Why? Because when you discount the future cash flows, if cash flow is far away in the future, then the value of that far away cash flow today is very small. For example, if I promise you 1000 NT 20 years later, so I come to you today, right now, and say, okay, I promise to give you 1000 NT 20 years later. Is that promise very, very valuable? Who knows what happens in 20 years, right? Who knows what happens in 20 years? Who knows if I will be able to give you that 1000 NT 20 years later, okay? So when you talk about far away, the future cash flows are valued less when there is longer to wait. And for annuity due, as opposed to regular annuity, all of these payments come a little bit closer by 1 year. So the value of all of them today is going to be a little bit greater. You see? So PV is going to be greater for annuity due rather than for ordinary annuity if all the other numbers are exactly the same. Let's copy these again. Control C, Control V. And in this case, let's say we change it a little bit. Let's say you invest originally 50,000, okay? In both of these investments, originally you invest 50,000, and let's say 5 years later you plan to buy something, so you're gonna need the money. So 5 years later is when you're gonna withdraw all of the future value. We're going to calculate this future value, so question mark here. But during the 5 years, you will also invest a little bit more every year. Let's say you're going to invest another 5,000 every year into this investment. That's going to be cash outflow from your pocket. So that's going to be a negative 5,000. And let's say you're going to do it every year. Something like that. Okay. So let me copy these cash flow payments over here so that we can have two timelines. Everything is the same about these timelines. Let's change the interest rates so we have different examples. Say 9% interest rate, 9% interest rate here. So everything is the same about these two timelines. The only difference is one of them involves PMTs that happen at the end of periods. Another one involves PMTs that happen at the beginning of the periods. So ordinary annuity versus annuity due. The question is, how much is your investment worth after 5 years? Okay. Control V. So clearly we need to calculate FV. Let's calculate the FV over here and see if there is any difference, see if we can learn anything about the difference between these two annuities. So equals FV, open the brackets, you know how to do that. For rate it's 0.09, comma, and PR is 5, PMT is negative 5,000. So I'm going to contribute more into the investment every year. Comma, PV is negative 50,000. Here I'm not going to ignore the rest of the hints. Comma, for type I'm going to hit 0 because it's ordinary annuity and close the brackets. So with this rate of 9% every year, including interest on interest, by the end of 5 years I'll have more than 106,000. So that's pretty good. How about annuity due? Again, equals FV, open the brackets, the rate of 9% per year, which is very high. That's why the future value is going to be pretty high. 5 years, PMT is negative 5,000, PV negative 50,000. And for type 1, because that's ordinary annuity, and the number here is going to be, again, bigger, okay? 109,000 and more, over 106,000. The reason for that is because each of these 5,000s have more time to grow, right? Look at the 5,000s in the first example. The first additional investment of 5,000 only has 1, 2, 3, 4 years to grow. The last 5,000 doesn't have any time to grow at all. right? So you deposit this 5,000 yesterday, and today you already withdraw all of the money. So each of these 5,000s has 1 year less to grow compared to the 5,000s in the annuity due. For example, this first additional payment of 5,000 has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to grow, as opposed to 4 years to grow for the initial additional 5,000 payment in the upper example. Okay, so that's why for annuity due, future value is going to be greater. And as we mentioned, for annuity due, present value is also going to be greater. Okay, so there is that. And stop presenting. Pin myself here. Okay, that's the first half of today's lecture. We still have another half, but one thing I gotta tell you is my understanding is that Google has changed Google Meets a little, and for the free versions, which I only have free, only the first hour is allowed. After that, we will be automatically disconnected. So instead of being thrown out of the meeting during the class, let's actually disconnect completely when we go for a break now, and I will have to create a new meeting and post you a new link on Moodle 10 minutes later after the break, so that we don't run out of the 1 hour free meeting, and so that we are not thrown out of the meeting very, very soon. Okay, so we're going for a break, and previously, if you had this sort of meetings, actually we had in the first and second week of this semester, we used to just pause this and just go for a break, but we will be thrown out of the meeting after 1 hour finishes. That's in another 16 minutes. In 16 minutes, this will be turned off automatically anyway. So I'm gonna disconnect. Everyone will be thrown out of this meeting, and we'll have to get a new link on Moodle 10-15 minutes later. See you soon.